falsifying the police records, the
Oh,
number of arrests and all of that over the last couple of years
oh,
to not report as much crime and to diminish it and all of that. What's interesting is during my career in the FBI and using data from all of the agencies and nationally, we saw that so many times. A new governor or a new mayor would come in and then instruct the police, well, don't count this. Don't count this crime. Don't count that crime. And then it would make it look like, wow, less crime this year than in the past. And it was always political
uh-huh.
nonsense.
So
And
yeah,
so they've pretty much zeroed in on a couple of police officials that have been doing that. So we'll see what comes with that.
that's very interesting. That's very interesting.
Very,
So yeah,
very
they turn out how much we can trust on the numbers that they provide,
correct.
right? That's the essential. Okay, let's start our program. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Cheyenne's Forum. Today is August 19th. Welcome, Tom, my dear friend. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you. How are you?
Very good. Thank you, Tom. So nice to see you here again. Every Tuesday, we have 1 hour with Tom. Tom worked in FBI for 30 years, and he worked as a assistant director of FBI for 5 years, and he's retired now. Again, thank you so much, Tom. All
You're
right.
welcome.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure. Yeah, let's start with Washington, D.C. I saw a good number that I want to share with you that from the post of Elon Musk. Elon Musk just posted the data show how much crime has dropped in D.C. since President Trump took over. It's about a week, right?
Right.
Down 46%. Uh, Carjacking down 83%. Can you believe that? 83%.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And violent crime down 22%. Remember, it's only 1 week. Wow. So, how could that happen? Tom,
Well,
please.
first of all, they've arrested
Uh-huh.
somewhere near 500 people, many of them for violent crimes, many in the worst neighborhoods,
Mhm.
the worst wards with the highest crime rates.
Mhm.
They've taken dozens of weapons, guns, knives away from these people that they've arrested and brought charges against. So it's just simple. You have fewer criminals on the street and fewer people on the street carrying weapons that have been taken away from them. So the logic is that, yes, the crime rate would go down. And I think that the more that the word gets out that the Trump administration, with the police being helped by National Guard, ATF, FBI, DEA, all the federal agents banding together to try to straighten out the district, it's having a huge effect and it'll keep having a huge effect. What's interesting, if you notice this, not to be too racial here, but
Mhm.
the people in the black communities where these crimes and arrests have occurred are very, very high praise for Trump and for the administration coming in and helping in their community.
Mhm.
And if you notice the protests, yesterday there was a huge protest in the
Oh,
DC mall.
right.
Take a look at the protesters. Almost all are white,
Yep.
young, white, 20-year-old liberal, basically nitwits, arguing against the Trump administration doing this. But boy, they don't want to talk to the people in the communities that are being helped by this, by the law enforcement, by law and order, and all of that, which are the policies of the administration. What's also interesting is going back to the beginning of last week when the troops started coming in to help, very little negative comment from Muriel Bowser, the mayor.
You're
She
right.
was she was saying publicly, well, we're going to cooperate and we hope this helps. And she was being very positive, and a good thing she was, because it's hard to deny how
Mhm.
much the improved law enforcement has helped.
Mhm. That's right. That's right. And glad you mentioned that some people protest, and these people are most young and white. And I have actually read a reporter and saying that someone support them to do so. And a part of them, maybe a huge part of them, are the employees from the government just being fired or pay leave. So they're not
Could be.
satisfied. Yeah, they're not happy. But Soros, again, not surprised behind this.
Yeah,
So,
there's organizations affiliated with Soros that
mhm,
are basically advertising for people to come work for them. Come work for us, and we'll put you on the street with weapons or signs, sticks, clubs, whatever, to protest the administration or protest anything. They're for hire to be protesters. And we've seen this, again, going back to my career, go back 50 years. We've seen this over and over and over, where large demonstrations have been funded by these groups that pay them. So you have paid protesters coming into these cities, whatever the issue might be. That they protest a wide variety of things. Well, right now, anything anti-Trump, anti-administration, anti-police, that's all where they get all of these people to come in. They would come in and volunteer to protest, but they'll also come in to be paid and be supplied.
hello, Tom.
Yeah, are you there?
I don't know what happens. I just suddenly lost my internet and then come back.
Yeah, came back.
Oh, sorry about that. So you're the mayor of Washington D.C. actually like to cooperate with federal government to make Washington safe again.
Well, it's hard for her
And
to be
then,
too critical because it's a federal city.
right.
And it's been less federal over the years since they've given it home rule. And here you can vote for your own council
Mhm.
people and mayor and key figures. And instead, they vote in these people that have basically caused the city to go downhill. Higher
Right.
crime, graffiti, damage, you name it.
Mhm.
And Trump, for one, has been saying since his first campaign in 2015, 2016,
Mhm.
that it's terrible what's happened to Washington. It's terrible that various administrations of the DC government have allowed this. And
Yeah.
then they wonder why people don't want them to become a state. Well, obviously not.
Mhm.
So so yeah, it's kind of interesting that she didn't take too much of a confrontational tone in
Right.
the beginning, and it's a good thing because she would have been proven dramatically to be wrong.
Right, exactly. And then we talk about some people got the support from Soros, and they even put an advertisement to have people gather together to
Right.
have protest. I just wonder, is that even legal to have people get together and pay them for the protest? Is that okay to do that?
Well, theoretically, no, but then they could argue that these are volunteers, excuse me, and they're reimbursing them for their expenses. And if they're going to travel and all of that, but you would think if you're going to have protesters in DC protesting federal involvement in the law enforcement of DC,
Hmm.
well, they ought to be from DC, not
Sure.
from other cities, not from other parts of the country, not from liberal colleges or any of that. They
Hmm.
should be the residents that are affected by this. And the
Hmm.
residents that are the most effective, interestingly, are the Black and minority communities in the district, and there's the same thing in other cities that have been begging for law enforcement help, begging to clean up their streets, to get these people off the street, the drug traffickers, the child traffickers, all of that.
Hmm.
And certainly during the Democratic administration, it's fallen on deaf ears. And
Hmm.
you've had the opposite. Now you hear people like Gavin Newsom still, complaining about this. And the majority of their residents don't want this. They don't want this high crime. They don't want all of that.
Yeah.
So I think so far, what the administration's been doing to especially basically to make an example of DC, to show that if you have a federal, state, local, city partnership, you can clean up a lot of things and you can make it better. Now, I
Hmm.
think I mentioned last time that when I was still in the FBI, back in the 80s, 90s, up until 2008, the
Hmm.
FBI had task forces with the DC police, and agents were assigned there basically to investigate using the RICO statute to bring RICO prosecutions against gangs, against organizations. I remember at the time, one of the leading gangs was the J Street Gang in D.C. And the decision was made to use the experience of the FBI investigating the mafia, investigating drug cartels, investigating organizations, which the RICO statute was written and passed to address organizations. It was designed to go after organizations that had soldiers, captains, bosses, underbosses, consigliaries, and use the organization to show that these are professional criminals that are in business to be criminals. And to use the statute, use RICO, which stood for Racketeering, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations, use the statute, which had tremendous penalties compared. And really, I was running the organized crime program in the mid-90s, and we used that statute successfully against a number of the mafia families, putting the bosses in jail. And the penalties, when you were convicted under RICO, you could be given life without parole. That meant no matter what, if you got sick, you died in prison. You didn't get out for good behavior, or you served 6 years of a 20-year sentence and okay, no. If you were sentenced to life without parole, that was a death sentence, essentially. You're never getting out. Guys like John Gotti, the boss of the Gambino family, and probably the most widely known gangster in the U.S. at the time, when he was sentenced to life without parole in 1992, later he develops throat cancer. It didn't matter. They put him in a prison hospital for surgery, back to the jail. So he could either, when his health was poor, he could be in a federal jail hospital or the federal jail itself. And he eventually died in prison. And that was it. There was no getting out, period.
Wow, that's a big threat, which it works very well. Yeah, so people just asking if Washington, D.C. can do that, Chicago can do that, LA can do that, San Francisco can do that, or every city.
They can. We had, again, when I was in the Bureau, we had task forces that were partnerships of the FBI, along with a couple other federal agencies like ATF or DEA, working with the police. And in some of those cases, we deputized the police to be federal deputy marshals under the federal task force to investigate with the authority of a federal law enforcement agency. Now, in the case when I was a street agent still in Chicago, even before I became a supervisor in the way back when, we had task forces there. We deputized Chicago police officers to be able to do our surveillances and use federal authority. And at the same time, the state deputized us. So I was actually then sworn in as an Illinois state police officer. And I still have the credentials from that time. So we had all the FBI agents on the task force became state police, had state police authority, and all of the state and local county police were given federal authority, and we worked together. Then we used the federal statutes, and that enabled, because not every state had wiretapping authority or many of the authorities that the FBI had. And so we would run those investigations using our authority and get electronic surveillance and other authority that the police would also be involved with us to do. And it was very successful back at that time, back in the 80s, 90s, really all the way to the present time. Now, I think that what kind of derailed it a little bit was 9/11. Then you had more and more of federal law enforcement devoted to counterterrorism. But now crime, when you do that, violent crime on the street makes a comeback. And that's why now, the need to go back to federal, state, and local task forces to address it.
Wow, this is a good. It gave us hope. Actually, I went to LA downtown on past Sunday, which is 2 days ago. And what I saw there is so sad. The whole town, the downtown area is a fashion district before, and so many people are there, businesses and cars. It's a very vivid place. And now you go there, it's just like ghost town. Business is gone, people are disappeared, and then the mass, the garbage is everywhere. I was shocked.
Look at the management, starting with the governor of the state,
I
Newsom,
know.
then go down to the communist mayor, Bass,
My
and the
gosh.
people that working for her. So between the state and the local authorities, that's what you have. You have a tremendous rise in homelessness on the street,
Yeah,
criminals,
yeah,
drug trafficking, you name it.
yeah.
Um,
And
Basically an epidemic.
I know, I just cannot believe my eyes. It's the garbage, Tom. This is the garbage everywhere in LA area, downtown. Supposed to be very cute and nice, and it's just gone. It's gone.
Yeah, I've not been to LA in the last few years since
Oh
Karen
my,
Bass has been mayor, but I can remember I was an assistant special agent in charge in San Francisco
right.
for 5 years in the mid 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And San Francisco, one of the most beautiful cities in the world.
Right.
And it was spectacular. And then you saw basically starting with Gavin Newsom, what happened when I was in San Francisco, you had Willie Brown was the mayor,
Mm-hmm.
and he was very flamboyant. He was Democratic, but yet, he wanted to keep San Francisco nice.
Right.
And also then he held statewide office and wanted to keep California nice. So you
Mm-hmm.
have Gavin Newsom come in, become the mayor,
Mm-hmm.
and San Francisco immediately goes downhill.
Oh
Well,
my God.
that's not good enough. Now he becomes the governor and takes the whole state with him downhill. And then he's been talking about trying to be the president so he
I
can wreck the whole country.
I know.
Wrecking California is not, good
Not
enough for
enough.
him. And
Yep.
you look at the policies, you look at the rhetoric, you look at all of that, and it's a complete failure.
Yep. He is. He is. And the Democrats right now propaganda for him and saying that he is the king of the America. It's it's just insane, crazy. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it is.
hopefully when Washington getting better and better and back to the position that she should be, I wish that the other blue cities can follow the example of Washington D.C. It shows people that it can change. It can be changed in very short period of time if you have right management.
Well, that goes back to when Biden was president.
Hmm.
And he was complaining that he couldn't fix the border because we
Oh yeah.
needed new laws, we needed all of this and that. And Trump gets in and fixes it immediately. And Trump says, "You don't need new laws, you just needed a new president."
Yeah, exactly.
And that's basically what's happened. And California would be the same way. They need a new governor.
Hmm.
Los Angeles, electing the complete communist Karen Bass, unbelievable. And the mismanagement, not just the liberal management, but mismanagement, so that when fires happen, you don't have any water in the reservoirs, you don't have the fire hydrants working. You
Yeah,
know, they don't talk a lot about in LA the number of criminals that have stolen fire hydrants
yeah.
so that, for the pipes or whatever involved in it. So you've had this tremendous, horrible management. And what I wonder is what is the absolute level of stupidity in the Democratic Party at large?
Yeah.
Talking about the people that vote for this.
Hmm.
Now we have, the freedom of elections in this country so that you can pick the right leaders.
Right.
And what we see in these blue states and the blue cities, especially, is they elect morons. They're morons electing morons or blind leading the blind. And I think that, that's the tragedy of this is that there's no excuse for the public being that stupid. And if you
Hmm.
go back to the founding fathers talking about in order to have the electorate make the right decisions, they have to be well informed. You
Yeah.
need a knowledgeable electorate to be able to select the right people to run cities, states, and the country.
Hmm.
And, we've seen a lack of that. Now
Mm-hmm.
you can blame the education system has gone downhill under their management. The state-run governments have gone downhill. All of these things have been negatively impacted by Democratic management.
Exactly. Exactly.
And they don't want to admit it. So you have the Democrats in Texas gerrymandering their districts over the last several years to try to favor Democrats
Mm-hmm.
improperly. And then when there's going to be a change back and the Republicans say, okay, we're going to meet and we're going to straighten that out, they leave the state. So they don't have a quorum to even
Yeah, this is crazy.
hold hearings.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
now, except for a few, they're all back and they've got a quorum. So
Mm-hmm.
all they've done is delay the inevitable that Republicans now are going to try to make it fair, try to make it straight. The Republicans aren't saying we're
Right.
going to gerrymander and steal these districts so we have more Republican districts than we deserve.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying they want to even it out. So there's a fair and balanced electorate matching the congressional districts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
that's right. Yeah, so they're trying everything they can, every inch they can to grab the power. But the good
to
thing is,
yeah.
yesterday, I think it's big day, a huge day to me, is President Trump will sign an executive order to eliminating mailing ballots and the
Right.
voting machines before 2026 midterm election. So I was so excited about that. I've been waiting for that for
Right.
years. So what do you think about that? And what the
Oh,
Democrats
that's
react?
absolutely necessary. I can remember going back to Jimmy Carter when he was president, saying mail-in ballots enable fraud,
Yeah.
enable stealing votes, and putting in all these fraudulent ballots
Mm-hmm.
all the way back then.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been true all along. And that's why, the Democrats took advantage, especially of COVID, to
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, we're going to make it so that all the ballots can be mailed in. And
Mm-hmm.
then you saw the way they counted, the way they, in various districts where the ballots, they stopped counting at midnight. Everybody went home, and then Democrats went back to work at 1 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
counting ballots, stealing ballots, and all of that. I think that that's a tremendous move. Now the question is, all the lawsuits are going to come to stop them. All the judges that are Democrats are going to say he can't do it. So we'll
Right.
go back into a battle like that. But there's no
Right.
question that mail-in ballots absolutely enable massive fraud.
Oh yeah. Big time.
So,
Big time. And then there's one legal question regarding the authority of the election. So the election should be belong to every state. So how the federal government can control the way
well,
they
that's where the argument is. Constitutionally, it's been always held that
right,
elections will be run by the states.
right.
So now we'll see. And you'll have the lawsuits on the other end where Trump and the federal government are going to say, what you're doing is stealing votes from honest citizens, and that's not fair. That's illegal. That's voter fraud and other things that are federal violations.
Right.
So some of the laws that were passed during the Johnson administration, the Voting Rights Act, and some of those things now will be used against the Democrats
Hmm.
that say, no, when you do this kind of stuff, you're depriving legitimate citizens of a legitimate vote.
Right,
And
right.
that's a violation of the Voting Rights Act. So we'll see. We'll see how
Okay.
that goes.
So your point is if the state violating the rights, the government, I mean the federal can take over or
Theoretically, yeah. Yeah, because,
oh, that's a good
I
point.
mean, the states control the police. But if a police deprive you of your rights under federal law, you can sue the police, for deprivation of your civil rights. And so
Right,
that's
right,
what they could try to tie up that legal argument with voting and say the states don't have a right to allow illegal voting or these kind of violations that deprive even their own citizens
right,
of
right.
their vote.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And also, I remember when President Trump has the article about that, he mentioned that in the federal election, the state are the agent to collect and count the ballot for the federal. So maybe my understanding is, I don't know if that's true or not, at least at federal election, you have to follow the way that the federal managed, saying that if federal do not allow voting ballot and voting machine, mailing ballot and voting machine, then the state cannot do that. You have to follow the federal rules
Right.
on the federal election.
One of the people in the government that's going to really help in this whole thing
Mhm.
is the head of the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, Harmeet Dillon.
Oh,
And
she's great.
she's fantastic. So she's been looking at some of these laws and saying, wait a minute, you're depriving people of their rights.
Right,
You're improperly doing that. So some of these violations are more than just,
right.
minor violations of procedures.
Mhm,
But if you're denying people of their rights
mhm,
as electors, as the citizens voting, then that raises a number of issues. And the fact that they're going to challenge it and that she'll challenge it
mhm,
is tremendous. She is one of the, so far you haven't heard a lot about her. She's one of the best selections made in the Department of Justice to be
uh-huh,
looking at. The
right.
Civil Rights Division has a tremendous amount of power.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, mention about that. I think she fired a lot of attorneys from DOJ. And I remember 2, 3 months ago, you saying that there are so many lawyers there are not like Trump. They don't want to serve Trump. They don't want to serve the conservative. They are really hard to deal with. So you have to clean the house at DOJ before you can really do something right. So it
Yeah,
looks
and that's what's happening now. I
right.
think that's what's happening now. Many of these people are being cleared out.
So I just curious, is that a job of Bundy's or some other people's job? Can
Well,
Bund
if Bondi oversees the Department of Justice, and then all of the heads of the different groups within DOJ is under Bondi's responsibility. So
uh-huh.
when they selected Harmeet Dillon to run the Civil Rights Division, whatever she does theoretically is under Bondi.
Oh yeah, we can yeah, that's right.
So
That's
she's a subordinate as an assistant attorney general under Bondi.
hmm yeah, she's really brave. She just don't
Yeah,
care. Yeah, she's a good one. And also talking about DOJ and FBI, Missouri Attorney General just I think he resigned from his position at Missouri and then will take up being the deputy director of FBI, work with Bengino.
right.
What do you think about this move? You think he's
Well,
a
I think again, if they need to get the right people into the bureau, if they're ever going to clean out some
Mhm,
of the subordinates further down the chain
mhm,
that have done all the damage over the last couple of years. So I think it's a good move.
mhm. So what do you think about Andrew Bailey? You think he's a tough person, tough enough to work in FBI to clean up the house?
I think so. And we'll
Yeah.
see how that goes. But so far, they have had so many mid-level people within the FBI that have done bad things, as well as enabling bad things on behalf of the higher level people all the way up to the directors.
Hmm.
And, so you look at even, I was saying on podcasts, saying publicly back when Christopher Wray was director
Hmm.
and he would testify before Congress, I would make the comment afterward, he's lying,
Hmm.
flat out lying. And now more of that's coming out. How many lies he told to the Congress. And I would like to see him prosecuted for that.
Yeah,
Like, as I want to see Comey prosecuted for the damage he's done.
right, right. So we have not seen any movement to call me yet, right? Or they already start to.
Well, they've got the grand juries are in progress,
Okay,
which
great.
include investigations of Comey and all of the whole group that you've seen
Hmm.
on TV going downhill. Don't go under Obama, and
Hmm.
then Clapper and Brennan and all of these people. There's a whole group of them. Then you have uh, grand jury impaneled, supposedly going back to Hillary Clinton, looking at her stuff, and not just the emails, but the foundation. And I can remember uh, 10 years ago, the Clinton Foundation being under massive number of investigations, and
Mhm.
the Department of Justice said, stop.
Yeah,
And one of
that's
the things people don't realize is that if the FBI has an investigation in progress, whether it's against a bank robber or whoever it might be, but it's an FBI investigation, the Department of Justice, whichever branch it's under, whoever's running that branch and their assistant U.S. attorneys can issue an order saying, stop. We're not, even if you solve this case, we won't prosecute. And then whoever's in charge of the investigation in the FBI, like I did many of these, would then write a letter to the
mm,
attorney or to the head of the U.S. Attorney's Office or the Attorney General, and it
mhm,
would say, this letter is to confirm a conversation on such and such date between AUSA so-and-so and FBI agent so-and-so, wherein your attorney said, if we solve this case, they won't prosecute. Therefore, we are ceasing all investigation. Those letters were called declination letters, meaning the prosecutors were going to decline prosecution no matter what you did. And that's basically what happened in the Hillary Clinton or
mhm,
Clinton Foundation investigations was that when whichever district it was being investigated in, or the federal Department of Justice,
mhm.
when those attorney, whoever was going to prosecute, whoever was responsible for that violation, issued the order saying, we're not prosecuting, no matter what you do. You solve it, you get a confession, we don't care. We're not prosecuting that case. Then we followed that up with a letter confirming that the prosecutors declined prosecution.
All right, so then I
So,
have thank you for your explanation, which is really important for us to understand the procedure of investigate a case. So my question, Tom, is if someone issue a letter asking for stop to investigate, no matter where the investigation is, what investigation is already done, do they need to give a reason of why to stop?
nope, nope. Just that they're the prosecutors. They don't want, they can see normally when they decline prosecution, Department of Justice or the prosecuting attorneys don't issue a letter. They just verbally tell the agent or the supervisor. And I know later when I was a higher ranking boss in the FBI, the agents would come in. I was just in a meeting, in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and they're not going to prosecute this case. And I said, what? So I'd call their
Mhm.
boss. And then
Yeah.
that person would say, yeah, my attorney thought we're not going to prosecute this. So that's the way you would only be told verbally, no prosecution. Then I would have my subordinate or me follow up with the letter. This is to confirm on such and
Right.
such date, your attorney told my agent, no prosecution. We're declining prosecution no matter what you do. Now, sometimes the declination might be if it was a type of financial case, especially, in a big city like Chicago,
Mhm.
the law might say if you do a fraud and it's more than $10,000, that's a federal felony, you can be prosecuted.
Right.
The U.S. Attorney's Office might tell you, no, 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 it needs to, not 10,000, that's too little. We'd have too many cases. The courts would be clogged up. It has to be 100,000. And so if you brought a case in that was 90,000, they might say, nope, sorry, we're not going to prosecute it. Same thing. We'd issue a letter of declination to the attorney just to confirm so that later they couldn't deny it. So in other words, we're sending them our letter saying this is to confirm that you've told the FBI no
Right.
prosecution. And that way, 2 years, 3 years later, if there's a big scandal, they
Mhm.
can't say, well,
Right.
we never said that.
Right.
Well, when we send them a letter saying you said that,
Right.
that's when they can argue it and say no. Now, sometimes we could argue in organized crime where we could say, okay, maybe your guideline now is typically 50,000 or 100,000.
Mhm.
Or with drugs, maybe it's 20 kilos instead of 1 kilo.
Mhm.
Um, Now, we might argue, and I was involved in many of these discussions with the U.S. Attorney's Office or with the Deputy Attorney General to
Right.
say, we would like to prosecute this as a strategy matter, that we would like this group to be defendants who
Mm-hmm.
may cooperate into the bigger
Right.
cases. And
Right.
therefore, there were many of those cases where we could get them to change their mind. It wasn't a routine case, but it was part of going after an organized crime, a La Cosa Nostra family or a cartel or
Sure.
something like that.
Sure.
And in many of those cases, then the U.S. Attorney's Office or Department of Justice might say, well, in that case, we'll go ahead and authorize prosecution. And then you would go forward with the investigation.
Sure. It's very
So there
interesting.
was a
And
lot of there was a lot of give and take between the investigative agencies and the prosecuting offices.
right. So, Tom, you mentioned two words. One is the guidelines, and the other is the law. So, between the guideline and the actual law, there are some spaces. So, how big the spaces can be?
As big as the prosecuting offices wants it to be.
So, they have a
So, and what
absolute.
happened, and it's not consistent. There's 96 federal judicial districts in the United States. So you might have, like in Miami, for instance, with all of the drugs and smuggling cases they had over the years,
Mhm.
you might have the U.S. Attorney's Office in Miami say, we're not prosecuting any drug trafficking case unless it's more than 20 kilos.
Are they making the law?
Yeah, they make the guidelines because of how it's going to clog up the courts or whatever. So they set that guideline, 20 kilos. And then if you're in the U.S. Attorney, if you're in Nebraska or
Mm,
some Midwest
mm,
more remote place where they don't have that level of drug cap, they
mm,
might prosecute 1 kilo.
mhm.
And if they get a drug smuggling case with 1 kilo, oh my God, we're going to make this an office special. We're going to assign an entire squad. And it's because that crime is more prevalent, let's say in South Florida than in the Midwest. Therefore, the guidelines are adjustable.
Right, right. Yeah, I understand that part, and thank you so much for mentioning because different location, different area have the different situations, so they have to follow the law accordingly. But however, the guideline should be follow the law. You cannot above the law. So is
No,
that
but they have discretion in which law or how much of the law to prosecute or how to prosecute or what's a violation. So that's why. And the reason is in Miami, if you prosecuted 1 kilo drug cases,
Mhm.
you'd have 10,000 people going to trial and the whole court system would shut down. So that was part of what they were allowed to do was set guidelines so that the whole judicial system would not collapse. And
That
then,
okay?
let it be more local in other districts.
Hmm. So that means they have a lot, it's huge power, huge power.
Absolutely.
Yeah, law enforcement. Yeah, I like to keep talking about this issue and then it will turn a law classroom. So we probably need to do that some other time. And a very important question I like to get your reaction or what's your takeaway from this is the most important and productive week of decades last week. We have two top summits. One is on the past Friday, President Trump and President Putin meeting Alaska, and the other one is on Monday at White House. We see Zelensky and the leaders, the big leaders of Europe, and President Trump are sitting in the White House and talk about the processing of the peace between Russia and Ukraine. So, what do you think about that? What do you predict of the outcome? Can we make the peace between Russia and Ukraine and stop the war?
Well, it's not all our decision. So I think that, one of the things Trump's trying to use strategy on this, basically, NATO was typically wanting to extend the Ukraine war. They just want to keep,
Mm-hmm,
using US weapons, US money, and then have the Ukrainians fight Russia and die.
mm-hmm,
The Trump's trying to bring that to a stop. So one of the things Trump's done is create a situation where he has tremendous political power with NATO.
Yeah.
NATO was pretty much washed up and worthless.
Mm-hmm.
Trump comes in and he told them that. And they had to admit, yeah, that's true. We're pretty much powerless. So then Trump sets it up where NATO he insists that they contribute more of their economies,
Mm-hmm.
the countries that belong to NATO, instead of contributing 2% of their gross domestic product, he increases it to no, you will pay 5.
Mm-hmm.
And the country, and then you can remember a couple of years ago where Trump's being interviewed, and they say, if we don't pay, does that mean you won't protect us if something happens? Because under NATO guidelines, if one country is attacked, everybody else is supposed to weigh in and protect them.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump says, you don't pay, we won't protect you. You're on your own. And they're like, you can't say that. He says, no, you're on your own. You got to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly these countries are paying.
Mm-hmm.
And even the heads of NATO were saying Trump has done more for NATO in the last 6 months than has been done over many, many years. So
Mm-hmm.
now he's trying to set NATO into a place where they have more power in Europe
Mm-hmm.
compared to what they've had.
Right.
So now what he's doing, you notice with Ukraine, instead of the US just giving away everything to Ukraine, Trump is saying, okay, we'll sell the weapons to NATO.
Mm-hmm.
Then NATO can deal with Ukraine and take
Right.
care of them, even though Ukraine's not in NATO.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that was one of the main objections that Putin does not want them to ever be part of NATO. So
Mm-hmm.
now, you've got set up where Trump, you notice he praised Putin as his friend. They work together. He respects them. Well, the truth is, the fact that Putin gets on a plane and flies to Alaska
Mm-hmm.
to meet Trump pretty much tells you Putin has respect for Trump to
Right.
do that.
Yeah.
He didn't say, look, if you meet me somewhere else, or I'm not going to bother, I don't need this, because he's winning in the Ukraine. So Putin
Mhm.
doesn't have to do anything. But when
That's
Trump
a good
said,
point.
I want to have a meeting with you and talk about this, Putin gets on a plane and meets with them. Then Trump tells the leaders in Europe, he's on the plane. In fact, I heard the reporter talking about this today. Trump was on the plane back to Washington from meeting with Putin.
Right.
And on the plane, the reporters are sleeping because it's 2 in the morning, and they're going to fly all night and to get back to Washington, 6, 7, 8 hours. Trump's on the phone to all the
Yeah.
European leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Let's meet. And the next day, they're on planes flying to Washington.
Yep.
All of the NATO countries, all of the other European allies, let's say. And they do that. Putin flies to Alaska out of respect for Trump.
Mm-hmm.
NATO leaders and European heads
Yep.
of state fly to Washington out of respect for Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So now Trump says, okay, the next meeting ought to be Putin and Zelensky by themselves.
Right.
And supposedly it's being scheduled, and that's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. Then Trump says, once they meet, hoping that they'll come up with some idea for
Mm-hmm.
ceasefire or what, then after that meeting, then there should be a meeting with the three leaders,
Right.
Trump, Putin, and Zelensky, the
Right.
three together. But
Mhm.
after the two of them meet, so that's the next step. So Trump is doing this, in a logical step by step.
Mm-hmm.
Well, nobody's done any of this.
Mm-hmm.
So when you heard the head of Finland talking while they're in the White House, while they're in the Oval Office, he
Mm-hmm.
says, nobody's ever done any of this. In the
Mm-hmm.
last 7, 8 years, Trump's done more in the short time
Yep.
that may lead to peace than anybody's ever done.
Right.
So now you have everybody agreeing that maybe they should take a hard look at this, look at what might be agreed, look at how they can have a ceasefire or whatever it might be,
Right.
and make peace.
Right. Right. Yep. Exactly. It shows that Trump bring the U.S. in the center of the world stage, where it should be, and always should be. And then it's very interesting when you see the Europe leaders come to White House with Zelensky. it's just like let the whole world know that they are together.
Yeah, and Zelensky, look at how he got dressed up for the meeting.
Oh yeah,
His brand new suit. Even,
I
even
know.
Trump commented about, how
Uh-huh.
that suit looks great and all of that, instead of his usual sweatshirt or t-shirt or
Exactly. Yeah.
whatever he does. So I think Zelensky's got the message that, you better maintain a
Right.
level of dignity
Right.
here
Hmm.
and show respect also
Hmm.
because you need it. You
Hmm.
need Trump, the European leaders to respect you, and you even need Putin
Right.
to at least meet with you and try to straighten this out.
Right. And I'm just wondering, do you think Putin and Zelensky can sit down and just talk to each other peacefully?
I think they could.
Because
You would
Zelensky,
hope so, but I think that, to be honest, I think that they will because this has gone so far. So, Putin flies to Alaska. He meets, has a great meeting and hugs and kisses with Trump and
I
everything.
know. Uh-huh.
And I cannot see him
Mhm.
agreeing to meet with Zelensky and then have it be worthless, have it be adversarial and
Mhm.
confrontational and all of that. So I think that by agreeing to meet, he's agreeing to a civil discussion
Right.
that might lead to something, knowing also it's going to be followed up by the meeting with Trump,
Oh yeah. This is a good point.
the real leader of the world at this point.
Yeah. So we're very happy to see what happened. And so far everything is like positive. At least show the positive side. And
Yeah,
we save life, which is the most important thing as American, as a world leader to do. So I'm so proud of Trump administration for
absolutely.
doing
Yeah,
so. Yeah, it's so
agree.
great. And also the last question, Tom, it's about a book. The title of the book is Breaking the Law. And they're talking about how the Democrats using the legal system to against Trump and the American citizens, which is really serious. So President Trump has called out the practice and warned that the judge shopping is at the level that we never saw before. And then it outcomes a case as soon as possible as soon as the judge is picked. We see that everywhere in America right now. And the left is using this, their final weapon, to take down America. This is what President Trump saying in the interview. And I just wonder that is there any way that we can stop it?
I think in the long run, the only way is really um, hoping that Trump can appoint more fair judges, in his term. Now, right now, you've got the one disadvantage, and trying to gather my thoughts on this.
Mhm.
There was good thing that came out of Trump not being in office the last 4 years
Yeah.
to show America how terrible a Democratic administration would be, to show what damage Biden did with the open borders and interest rates and you name it, all of the things, energy costs going up and et cetera.
Mhm.
And so that was a great, great advantage for Trump to come back into office and
Mhm.
have a legitimate set of issues to straighten out.
Right.
Only one major bad thing is that Biden, with the Democrats in the Senate, got to pick all of these liberal judges. And that's what Trump is suffering from, what we're all suffering from, is how
Mhm.
many of these judges so they can shop.
Mhm.
Now, for example, I understand that the grand jury, one of the grand juries that's meeting, investigating all of the Russia Gate and all those kind of things, is in the Midwest somewhere. I heard, one of the best reporters in Washington is John Solomon.
John Solomon.
And I've heard several interviews with him. He has tremendous sources in every branch of the executive branch, every department. And he was asked last night, I saw an interview. He was asked if he knows where that grand judge, he says, no, I only know it's in the Midwest, Some people were theorizing that maybe that grand jury is in Florida,
Mhm.
or maybe it's in a Midwestern state, but it's not in Washington, which is a big deal that it's not in Washington. So that means that the grand jury is going to be much more likely to return grand jury indictments against the various people that they're running the investigation on. And there's supposedly several grand juries going. So you have a lot of process that's ongoing. And, part of the result of that is going to be kind of a lawfare against Democrats that they've used on Trump.
Mhm.
All these prosecutions against Trump and Bannon and Navarro and various officials, Republican officials, and
Mhm.
then they've gone, General Flynn, they've all gone bankrupt defending themselves.
Yeah.
Not Trump, but the others can't afford hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. So
Mhm.
now what's going to happen against the Democrats is going to be kind of the same thing
Mhm.
against them. If you have grand juries in the Midwest or in Florida or outside of D.C., in
Mhm.
Virginia, wherever, returning indictments against all of that, the group that you've heard of
Yeah.
from Bremen, everybody below Obama,
Mhm.
and grand juries looking at Hillary Clinton and everything they did. So the chances then are going to be these people are going to go bankrupt defending themselves, and they're going to get a taste of their own medicine.
Mhm.
So we're going to have to see what happens in the next couple of years
Sure.
with the legal processes going on against all these people.
Well, this is a good to learn. Thank you, Tom. Thank you. They're gonna learn their lesson and how they treat people and people will treat them back. So yeah, well,
Maybe I don't know how much they learn because they're just so stupid in general, but we'll see. They're very arrogant. They're very, the level of hubris that they have is just amazing. And so hopefully, yeah, it would be nice to see them brought down to size, be humiliated actually, which is what they deserve.
Yep, yep, I agree. And we can wait and see. And yeah, thank you so much. We have two ways. One is have more good judges appoint, and the other is the backfire. So at least we have ways to get out.
Yeah, and generally the Supreme Court is conservative,
Mhm.
but not by a lot.
No.
So if we have one of the current judges retire, if it's a Democrat or a liberal,
Mhm.
then Trump will get another conservative pick for the court.
A
And a,
strong
and
one.
a Supreme Court judge is for a lifetime appointment, so it's going to
Yeah.
last a long time.
Yeah. Hopefully we can have at least a strong conservative go to the spring. So we'll see. All right.
Right.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tom, for the talking and everything. It's wonderful, wonderful. I'll translate into Chinese as soon as possible. And
Okay.
yeah, I really appreciate it. And I'll see you next week.
Okay. My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you.